Now imagine it's 1981, you've been watching Doctor Who for the past 7 years, and there's been one constant, Tom Baker. But now there's changes behind the scenes, there's changes in front of the camera, and this is about to culminate in the fourth Doctor regenerating. After 7 very successful years in the role, Tom Baker decided to leave the show, not only arguably being the most popular Doctor ever, but the highest viewed. Arguably at the time, these were the biggest shoes in UK television to fill. The change alone is massive, for this young, baby-faced actor to take the role. But if only people knew how different this era of the show was going to be. Now I want to say that this video is probably a little biased. The Fifth Doctor is probably my favourite classic Doctor, just due to the availability of VHS and DVDs that I had of him when I was younger. Nonetheless, there is a general consensus that he's a very boring Doctor with a very inconsistent run. And there's definitely merit to that opinion, and there's a lot you can say about that. But I also feel it's the first real attempt to make an arc out of the Doctor's character and have the direct personality of the Doctor be a consequence to the show. And I think that's a good thing. So we're going to be looking today at why the Fifth Doctor's era is better than you may think. Now to start off with, we better give the previous era its due. Tom Baker's era was undoubtedly the most popular era in the show's history. It was wonderful. Tom Baker was a public hero for kids, and the show had never got better viewing figures. But by 1979, Doctor Who was looking to be going on a downward trend. Most of the previous 2 seasons, bar The City of Death, had been very poorly received, and there was a bit of a crisis about the show's future. It was felt the Doctor Who needed to be brought into the 1980s. Now, who is going to have the difficult task of helming that change? The answer is John Nathan Turner. The colourful showman had already been working on Doctor Who since 1969, and he was chosen to bring the show into the 1980s. And part of his decision-making, besides getting rid of Tom Baker, was to give the show a bit more of a dramatic edge. He felt that the show had been getting a bit too silly in the face of adversaries and monsters. And I don't know what would give him that kind of idea. No idea what he's talking about. But with that, season 18 was underway and you could see the darker tones of the series. Outside of giving the Fourth Doctor a new costume, which Tom Baker hated by the way, we start to see some really emotional pieces as well as actual consequences for the Doctor's actions, which saw the Doctor lose his close friend Romana at the Gateway. This saw an end to one of the most popular TARDIS teams in Doctor Who history. Oh, but don't worry, they had you covered. Now this is what I like to call a Marmite TARDIS team. Some people love it, some people hate it. But that's exactly what it was a team. This was more of a family dynamic than we'd had in the previous few years. Now this didn't really work with the Fourth Doctor, but let's just say it grown on him. Now this dynamic is something we'll come back to later, but for now, let's talk about the Doctor himself. Now pretty much from the minute he sits up here, we know that this is going to be a struggle. As unlike his previous regenerations who have dealt with the change humorously, there actually appears to be a bit of trauma attached to this regeneration. As opposed to making jokes, he seems terrified and unhappy with his changes. And why not? This is probably the most dramatic personality change the Doctor's had to this point. He's less assured in himself, he's certainly less funny, and by God is he more vulnerable. And that is the perfect backdrop for a cast of companions, as it means the Doctor can be manipulated more by his opponents. We see that from the very off with the Master taking Adric. And this is something you'll see an awful lot throughout the Fifth Doctor's era, the companions consistently being in danger and the Fifth Doctor being powerless to stop it. And of course you know where this is going. For the first time since the 1960s, in the Doctor's first incarnation, we see a companion die on screen. And look at that face on the Doctor, he takes full blame for that. The guilt and responsibility of being this incarnation eats him alive at times. And generally, Earthshock is a good example of how the Doctor's weaknesses become very apparent in this incarnation. You don't see a commanding presence like you do with the Fourth Doctor. You don't see someone who's able to gain the trust of a crew, you don't see anyone who can stand up to the Cybermen here. Here you have someone who is too nice, and that is their downfall, especially in this story. A doctor with all the intellect, but without any of the ingenuity and any of the guile that had made the other doctors so great. Because of the trouble he gets his friends into, sometimes he is forced to do horrible things like this. Now, everything I'm saying here sounds like a massive criticism of this Doctor. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I think this makes him far more interesting. Again, despite being one of the nicest Doctors, his stories have some of the highest body counts. And this isn't the only time. There are several times where the Doctor's good nature and lack of authority end up getting people killed, which always leaves him with the same answer. There should have been another way. Unfortunately, this doesn't calm down for the Doctor, as no matter where he goes, death and destruction follows. And the worst example of this is in Resurrection of the Daleks, where not only does the Doctor's oldest enemies come back, but they come back with a vengeance, killing everything in their path, leaving nothing behind. The Daleks have been shown as destructive before, yes, but never like this. And the mess they leave behind in this story is catastrophic, with long-time companion Tegan Javanka making a very shocking decision. She's not going with them. Having joined the show in Tom Baker's penultimate story, she has been with this Doctor the entire journey, and you can tell that her departure really hurts him. And why did she leave? Because it stopped being fun. Because there was so much death and destruction around the Doctor. It's not his fault, but the universe always finds a way of damaging him. And very soon after that, Turlough leaves, finally able to join his own people. It wasn't that long ago that Nyssa decided to leave the TARDIS, deciding to stay and help her people rather than continue with the turbulent life of the Doctor. This is the Doctor, for the first time really, facing real-world consequences for his actions and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Of course, after Turlough leaves, it's not too long until we're introduced to Peri, American student who finds her way to Lanzarote and later the Planet of Fire. She's only just met the Doctor when they land on Androzani Major, and they are put to a battle to the death with Zhar's Jag. A battle which would be the Fifth Doctor's last, where he and Peri both get poisoned. After a very long battle, he is able to get one vial of the bat's milk antidote. And guess who he gives it to? That's right, the Doctor nearly kills himself to save one person. One person he's only just met. This is the essence of Fifth Doctor. Not over the top, not charismatic, not goofy, just kind. Too kind in the end for his own good. After taking so much pain and so much loss, he can finally rest. After paying the ultimate price, let's hope he has a good reward, eh?